I want to tell you a date. Not a date I believe in. A date that someone, somewhere has already calculated. On paper, with a ruler, with an open Bible in one hand, and a calendar in the other. And the worst part is that it matches. It matches almost perfectly with a signature that already happened. A document that was already signed. A handshake that the whole world saw on television and thought was just another political news story. I'm not going to tell you that the end has begun. I don't believe that. And I've already explained why in other videos, calmly. This isn't a prediction. It's a simulation. It's taking the strangest book in the Bible, Revelation, and asking, if it were now, if it were with these pieces that are on the table today. Trump, satellites, digital currency, a comet named after an Egyptian god circling the solar system. How would the puzzle fit together? I'll show you the assembly. You draw your own conclusions, but I promise you one thing. When I finish telling you this, you won't be able to read a newspaper headline the same way anymore. Come with me, because everything starts with a piece of paper, and with a peace that promises too quickly. There's a verse in Daniel 9:27 that speaks of a covenant. A man confirming a covenant with many for 7 years. Exactly 7 years. And what keeps me awake at night isn't the verse, it's the calendar coincidence. Because when that covenant is signed, in the simulation I'm about to show you, something is unlocked, not in heaven, on earth. The book of Revelation has a structure that almost no one explains properly. 7 seals, then 7 trumpets, then 7 bowls. A ladder descending, each step deeper than the last. And the first step, the first seal, is a rider, a white horse. This already deceives many people because it resembles Jesus. It is not. It is the opposite of Jesus. It is a cheap copy of him. Notice the detail that most people miss. This knight carries a bow. Without an arrow, a weapon he doesn't need to fire because he won't conquer with shouts, he'll conquer with a smile. Winning to win, conquering to conquer. That's what the text says. He arrives promising peace, and peace sells. Peace always sells. Now look around you today. A new leadership is speaking about sustainability, a global unification agenda, technological, financial, health-related, that already has a name and a date. Artificial intelligence is connecting everything that is known about everyone. Physical money is becoming a number on a screen. If you use Pix, you know how easy it is. Fast, practical, and free. But along with the practicality came something else. Everything started to be in one place. A single central bank is watching every penny that moves. And here, I need to tell you about an uncomfortable detail. Open the Communist Manifesto, Chapter 3, near the end. Marx lists 10 steps to implement socialism. One of them is the centralization of credit in a single central bank. This is not conspiracy theory. It's a text published over 170 years ago. And the central banks of the entire world answer, whether you like it or not, to a common umbrella. The Bank for International Settlements, the BIS, a central bank of central banks. Add to that digital identity, digital currency, total monitoring. Someone already summed it up better than I could. Digital identity is the cage. Digital currency is the lock on the door. Because on the day when only digital money exists, disconnecting someone from the system is as easy as pressing a key. There's no need to arrest anyone. Just disconnect them. And what's most frightening is that this discourse convinces everyone, the left and the right, the believer and the skeptic, because everyone hears the argument they want to hear. It's selling Pepsi to those who like Pepsi and Coke to those who like Coke. It's peace. We are bringing peace. The first seal has already been broken in the simulation, and life, at first, really does seem better. That's the most dangerous thing of all. Evil, in the beginning, doesn't hurt. All feigned peace has an expiration date. And in this simulation, that date is short. The second horseman mounts the red horse, and the Bible is direct. He was given power to take peace from the earth. He promises nothing more. He already has the sword in his hand, and he will use it. Wars that were regional, a conflict here, a tension there, things you'd see fleetingly on the news and change the channel, begin to merge. One becomes two. Two become one single, gigantic war, without clear borders. And the market feels it first. The food chain cracks. What was abundance becomes queues. What was guaranteed becomes rationing of food, of energy, of everything you never stopped to think could be lacking. Then comes the third seal, a black horse. And here the Bible uses an image that seems exaggerated, but it's pure mathematics. A measure of wheat for a denarius. Translating that into your own terms, a whole day's wages spent entirely on a single meal. It's inflation eating away at what's left of peace. People don't lose the money. They lose the value of money, which is far worse. Let me be honest with you, because this matters more than any date. I'm not telling you that you should prepare for this tomorrow. I'm showing you how the pieces fit together if, and it's a huge if, this pact that was signed is indeed the trigger. It could be a year from now, 50 years from now, never. Simulation only exists to show you the blueprint, not the clock. But notice something that nobody tells you in the history books of the future. Collapse never arrives, announced with sirens. It arrives as convenience. It arrives as a faster app, a shorter line, a prettier promise. And when you realize that peace had a crack, the red horse has already switched its sword to your own house. The veneer of global peace in this simulation doesn't last long. It cracks precisely where it was painted thickest, on top of the most beautiful promise. The fourth horseman rides a pale horse, the color of sickness. And the text says something I need you to listen to slowly. He was given power over a fourth of the earth. A quarter, 25%. If it were today, with 8 billion people on the planet, that would be 2 billion lives extinguished in a single stamp. Pandemic, famine, disaster, all together, all at once, not one at a time, as people always ask. Daniel, do you think a solar storm, an earthquake, a war, a new pandemic is coming? And the answer no one wants to hear is all of them at the same time. This isn't my imagination. A billionaire named Robert Bigelow hired an entire team of experts just to study whether humanity is at risk of extinction. His conclusion was that yes, and that it wouldn't be an isolated event. It would be a pile of cataclysms falling together. When I read that, I thought, this is the fourth seal dressed up as a scientific report. And it is right after this seal that the fifth comes. And this one hurts in a different way. Because the fifth seal is not about the earth. It's about people. It's about the martyrs crying out, "How long, Lord?" It's about persecution, not just of Christians, of anyone who loudly disagrees with the system that has been established. Censorship of faith, control of speech, people being disconnected from their own platforms for thinking differently, under the elegant guise of protection. You've seen this portrayal in movies, without realizing you were also reading prophecy. An elite at the top, with access to everything. A mass below, entertained, alienated, with the best screen and the worst purpose. Low life, high technology. It's the script of so much science fiction that nobody realized it was, in fact, the outline of a biblical chapter written 2,000 years ago. A quarter of the world disappears at this point in the simulation, and those who remain are left even more alone, because telling the truth has become the most expensive crime to commit. Sixth seal. And here the language changes tone. It moves away from politics and into physics. There was a great earthquake. The sun turned black. Cosmic upheaval. Global panic. There are serious people talking about this today without mentioning the apocalypse even once. A possible reversal of the Earth's magnetic poles. The Earth's crust floating on molten magma. And if this shift happens too quickly, what was a pole becomes an equator, and what was an equator becomes a pole, dragging everything along. Tides, climate, continents. The hottest regions of the planet become uninhabitable almost overnight. Those who survive are those who were already high up, in the mountains, the Andes, the Himalayas, the Rocky Mountains. And right after this shock, the text does something strange. It stops. Silence fell over the sky for about half an hour. A blackout. Not metaphorical. Think of a power outage, a communication cutoff. The entire planet silent for a moment, as if someone had unplugged the world. It's the pause before everything gets worse. And it is precisely here, in the middle of this silence, that the simulation marks the midpoint of the tribulation. The day the mask finally falls. Because it is at this moment that the figure who had been promising peace reveals what he always was. He enters the temple, demands worship only for himself, interrupts any worship that is not his own. Whoever worships another god is condemned. It is the abomination of desolation, the same act that a king named Antiochus Epiphanes committed centuries ago, profaning the sacred altar with his own hands. History repeats itself because the script of pride never changes. It only changes actors. And listen, I'm not telling you this to scare you. I'm telling you because those who understand the map don't get lost in the storm. Remember this silence, because it's within it that the true face of the system appears. And after that point, there's no way to pretend you didn't see it. In the Bible, the trumpet is never just decoration. It's an announcement. It's a declaration that something has changed phases. And in Israel, there's still a festival dedicated to this. 100 blasts of the shofar, the instrument that the English, without realizing the irony, call a trumpet. Trumpet, the last of these 100, some who study the subject carefully say, would mark the moment when the faithful are taken, the rapture, the instant when God removes his own before the worst blow falls. First trumpet. Fire and hail mixed with blood, falling upon the earth. A third of the forests burned. A third of the vegetation destroyed, simulating a volcanic eruption on a scale the planet hasn't seen in centuries. Second trumpet. Something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea. Some people look at the volcanic islands of the Atlantic and think, if a piece of that collapsed into the ocean, the resulting tsunami would reach entire coastlines, New York, Lisbon, Rio de Janeiro, in a few hours. A third of marine life would die, and those who imagine that this doesn't affect them because they don't fish, forget that everything that comes from the sea also feeds what eats meat, what plants, what breathes the same air. Third trumpet. A star falls. The Bible even gives it a name: wormwood. And the waters become bitter, unfit for consumption, both the sea and the rivers. Today there is a real celestial body named after an Egyptian god associated with destruction, Apophis, which has a predicted window of approach to Earth in 2029. You do the math backward, subtract 3.5 years from the tribulation, and it arrives at a date that has already passed not long ago. I don't know if it's a coincidence. I know it's too intriguing to ignore. Note, I'm not saying that this rock will fall. I'm saying that if the simulation is correct, the clock and the rock would be aligned in a way that no one programmed by chance. Fourth trumpet. Struck a third of the sun, a third of the moon, and a third of the stars. The sky darkens. It seems like poetic exaggeration until you remember that this has already happened. In the year 536, a series of volcanic eruptions threw so much ash into the atmosphere that the world entered a mini ice age, with the sun pale for more than a whole year. It happened before. It can happen again. Only this time with weapons capable of producing the same winter in hours, not in eruptions. And it is right here that the fifth trumpet comes in, the most disturbing of all. The bottomless pit opens, smoke rises, and creatures emerge from it, described in a way that sounds like a horror movie. Grasshopper bodies, long hair, a stinger that doesn't kill, only causes so much suffering that the person begs for death and doesn't find it. I can't tell you if it's a metaphor or literal. I know it's the most brutal portrayal of torment that exists in the entire Bible. Sixth trumpet. Unleashed to kill a third of those who remain. Do the math with me. A quarter had already been killed in the fourth seal. Now a third of what's left will go. The population plummets in a cascade, and the geographical scenario the text points to is always the same. The Middle East igniting, armies organizing, nations turning against Israel on a scale the world has never witnessed. Seventh trumpet. The closing of the cycle. The kingdom of the world has become the kingdom of our Lord. Before that, another blackout. The world falls silent again, power and communication cut off. Chaos taking the place that order tried to hold back until now. Did you notice that the pattern repeats itself? Each phase ends in silence. Because every collapse, however noisy it may seem from afar, always ends the same way. Silently. The glasses no longer announce anything. They spill. First cup. Painful ulcers on the skin of those who bear the mark of the system. Some see in it an ancient description of something that only gained a name in the 20th century. The effects of radiation on the human body. The skin that burns, peels, and does not heal. Second and third cup. The sea turns to blood, the rivers turn to blood. Fresh water, the source of everything that sustains a civilization, becomes unfit for consumption on a planetary scale. No modern structure can survive the lack of clean water for very long. Fourth cup. The sun burns with a heat that the atmosphere no longer filters properly. And here I need to tell you something that still chills me to this day. Right above Brazil, there is a real, documented magnetic anomaly. The South Atlantic anomaly. A kind of weakness in the planet's magnetic shield that has demonstrably increased the risk of exposure to solar radiation. I asked a dermatologist about this, without mentioning the Bible once, and she confirmed the increased risk. This isn't internet speculation. It's a measurement. Fifth cup. The system's throne plunges into darkness. The blackout reaches the center of power, the place from where everything was controlled. It's as if the same hand that flipped the switch at the beginning of the simulation has now decided to turn everything off again. Sixth cup. The Euphrates River dries up, and this geographical detail is more profound than it seems. This river historically separates east from west. It drying up means that the border that has always existed between the two worlds disappears. Regional wars, distant wars, everything merges into a single war, without an outside. It is the scenario that ancient texts call the kings of the East marching, the final rehearsal for the confrontation in the Valley of Armageddon. Seventh cup. The earth opens up, islands disappear, mountains level out. It's not the first time the earth's crust has changed shape. Darwin himself found fish fossils on mountaintops, proof that where there are now peaks, there was once the seabed. The earth has done this before. The question no one answers is, when it does it again, who is on top and who is below? The nations surround God's people in the simulation to wipe them out completely. An ancient text describes a woman fleeing to the desert, the enemy chasing after her and not being able to find her, as if there were a refuge that only those who need it know where it is. Not finding it, the pursuer returns furious to hunt what remains. And it is precisely at this moment, at the most desperate point of the entire simulation, that the heavens open. He comes down, and not with speeches, not with an army, not with a flag. He comes down with only one weapon, the very words coming from his own mouth. And that is enough to dismantle everything the other side has built over the years. The text says something almost funny in its sadness. All peoples, all languages, all nations will see, and they will cry. Not with joy, with regret. Because deep down, everyone always knew. He steps onto the Mount of Olives, the same mount where centuries before, someone wept looking at a temple that refused to recognize him. The mount splits open like a path, and the people flee through it, while the remaining army is destroyed in a single breath. Those who died faithful are resurrected. Those who were taken before descend with them, and a 1,000-year reign begins. A land that returns to resemble the garden it was before everything went wrong. The tame lion, the serpent without venom, 100-year-old man, still young. But even after 1,000 years of peace, the text reserves one last chapter. A final rebellion, called Gog and Magog, as if it were necessary to prove one last time that there are those who prefer wrongdoing even after witnessing good firsthand. And then everything ends, not in destruction, but in victory. Because that's what nobody tells you about the apocalypse. The book isn't about the end of the world. It's about who wins in the end. And if you've made it this far with me, perhaps the question that remains isn't when it happens. It's if it happened tomorrow. Whose side would you be on? If you want to be on the side that this entire simulation points to as the winner, you don't need a complicated formula. It's a phrase spoken from the heart. I receive Jesus as my Lord and Savior, and I ask forgiveness for my mistakes. That's all. And you can do it now, even before closing this video. If this topic resonated with you, help me bring it to more people. Subscribe to the channel. Share it with at least 5 people who need to hear this today. Leave a comment, honestly, telling me what struck you most here. And tell me, which seal, which trumpet, which cup would you like me to open in detail in the next video?